It is Talking Trash with Will Nash. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate you listening wherever you listen to and watch your favorite podcast. And I'm excited because we are welcoming back a guest onto the show today, Michelle Dunn. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you again. Now, this is sort of like a two-parter. This is part two of our little series that we're doing with Talking Trash. Now, maybe you haven't had a chance yet to watch the last episode, but that was all about from junior kindergarten to grade 12, recycling, sharing some tips, sharing some thoughts within the school system. If you don't know, Michelle is a specialist in green initiatives within the education system. And it's such an interesting journey. I mean, as a mother yourself, where you have your kids, they go through kindergarten, into grade school, high school, and then it's time to send them off to college or university with, they have knowledge, but do they really know everything they need to know about recycling?
Well, I'm not quite there yet with my kids. I don't want to age myself too much, but we are starting to think about school and post-secondary, and recycling and waste is a big topic with schools today. I deal with them every single day. And it's interesting that you said, have they learned enough in, K-12 and the public school system to then, or, Catholic school, just the elementary school, to take that on to the next step. And it's almost like you're starting over again, because where are your kids going to school? Is it the same town? Is it the same province, state, country? It's all different. And recycling changes from place to place. And you almost need to relearn, re-educate, starting from day one, especially if you're an international student. What you know at home could be completely different, even the color system. And that's why I think, consistency is key in the elementary schools when it comes down to color. Instantly, I think green compost. Not everybody does. It depends on where you're from. Blue is, mixed recycling here. Well, if I go to a school, in Indiana, is it the same? So It's something to think about, and it's something as sustainability advisors and facilities managers and whoever holds the title in within post-secondary school, how are they going to reach the students, and how are they going to re-educate them and inform them of the program? It can't be as simple as just putting it on a newspaper billboard or, on an Instagram saying this is how we recycle, because it's not going to stick.
It's so interesting to me too, and you brought up the conversation about international students, and a lot of schools have a large number of the population as international students. And there could be some barriers there. There could be some, whether it's a color barrier, whether it's an English barrier, where they're either learning or they're understanding what an emoji or a symbol means when they look at something. What are some of the kind of conversations you've had about that when you're trying to come up with the signage, you're trying to come up with the logos that everyone, maybe no matter where they're from, what their background on recycling is, will understand that, okay, you know what? This goes in the paper bin, this goes in the waste bin.
I mean, thankfully, we have some case studies from the past. We've got some data that showcases these are universal symbols. So like a trash can for waste. Many schools will choose to use both pictograms and verbiage to, decipher what stream is what and what's collected in what. But a big part of once you decide on your signage, and again, many schools have custom signage and they work really, really hard, their teams, their green teams, their sustainability department, on what's going to create and the most successful program for them, because really at the end of the day, you have to increase your diversion rate. And that's always a thought process for them. And how are we going to get there? Again, it always comes back to education, informing right from day one when students get there for Frosh Week. I don't know if they call that in the US, but certainly here in Canada. And again, those students that are staying in the dorms, hosting and holding meetings and flyers, or in their kits of, you're moving into your room from day one. Here's your recycling container, here's your compost container, and what goes in what, and are you responsible for taking it to a centralized area in the common lunchroom, or do you have to walk down 20 flights of stairs and take it outside yourself, or put it in a trash chute? All schools are different, and you need to learn the programs.
I remember being a college student, and you get to the school, you get to college, you get to Frosh Week, a lot of excitement in the air, a lot of chaos, and sometimes you get a little package of things, if I'm not mistaken, which you had mentioned, you get the recycling bin in now, maybe a compost, a little mini compost for your dorm room. I also remember, and I don't know if it would be the same way now, sometimes getting a plastic water bottle. But I feel like that's a conversation that has come up a lot lately in terms of the use of the one-time use plastic water bottles. Does it look a little different now?
I mean, I think so. And I think the world in general, it's, to me and to many others, it's either they're banned, so plastic water bottles are just banned, or it's embarrassing almost to be seen with one. And so students today, it's almost like a trend, not just students, but to have a reusable water. And some of the plastic water bottles that you mentioned, if they're recycled or made with recycled material, those are found and those are great. Or you might have, your handy dandy Stanley or your Yeti, not that this video is sponsored, but they're great. And the schools now introduce reusable or the water fill stations. Yeah. Students look for those. That's the first thing. Okay, where, both my girls play volleyball, and sometimes, we're at colleges and universities and we look for those fillable stations where we can refill up our water bottles. And it's part of programs now that schools are introducing, that you're given that bottle at Frosh Week, and it's a pride thing as well.
Absolutely. And the thing is, when you're a student, especially when you're first going into college or university, you are on a budget, capital B, right? So if you're looking around the school for those free water fill stations as compared to paying, $3, $4, $5 for a bottle of water from the fridge, it's just economically better as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think students are always thinking about that, but they want to be seen, a lot of them, as leaders as well. And so having, reusable containers in their cafeterias and compostable cutlery, those are all another step up than you're not going to find in the elementary school system, but they're everywhere when it gets to secondary.
So I know we had previously talked about in the last podcast about the barriers that come into play from K to 12, right? K-12. What are some of the barriers when you're in colleges or universities, when you're in post-secondary? Because you'd like to think that, again, the knowledge has been retained, but you also said it's almost like starting over again by the time they're in college or university. What are some of the barriers that colleges and universities face?
I think, of course, budget is always a thought. And do you have enough bins and bin placement? That's always going to be a challenge, having the right stations in the right places and enough of them. The other thing is events, tailgating. It's not something that we think about in elementary, but it's huge. School sports and, stadiums and recycling, and how do you collect the waste and recycling from those events? Because it's a lot that are generated, and people are bringing in their own, or they're buying them, at the event themselves. And you have to try to collect that waste and recycling. You have to try to collect it somehow, or it's going to end up in the garage or the ground in parking lots.
That's interesting too, though. It makes sense, right? Whether maybe it's like a football game or a volleyball game or a concert or just any sort of event that will happen in post-secondary, when a lot of these colleges and universities are coordinating and developing and planning these programs, how much of those events are they thinking about when they're developing these programs? Is it a big part of their initiatives?
I think you have to think of it as a whole. Just the program as a whole from the school standpoint, right from the dining halls and the dorm rooms, the events, the main auditoriums or centralized areas. It's because you really need to keep your program consistent. And even at those events, you might have different bins, but the signage needs to remain the same. The restrictive openings, the colors, everything has to be consistent no matter where you are in the school, so that the behavior is learned and the pattern is there from place to place.
You talked about something that made me think about something else. When you mentioned about the dorms, it took me back to walking into a friend's dorm when I was in school at Mohawk College, and I the smells that I could smell. This is long before the days of, anything beyond a garbage bin in your room. And, you'd like to think that people are clean and people are neat and tidy, but not everybody is. How do they ensure that if you're given a recycling bin or you're given a green bin, so to speak, in these dorms, that they are eventually removed out of the dorm room? Because that could be an issue too, right?
I think it's about making it simple and about making it easy. And so if, you only have to walk 10 feet to get to that next centralized station to dump your, bins that are in your room, students are a lot more inclined to do that than if they have to go down 2 flights of stairs and they're responsible for taking it outside into a large cart and putting it in there. We get pushback from office admin that, don't want to take their own waste and recycling from their desk and put it to a centralized area, because that's something to think about as well with schools. It's not just the students. It's also the office staff. It's admin. How do we collect their waste and recycling? What's the behavior that they're going to learn? Are they going to move to a more self-servicing station, which is what the trend is and what you're seeing, these days, and where you have to get up and walk from your desk? Are you going to get any pushback? Because again, people don't like change. And if you were getting your waste and recycling cleaned daily and now you're responsible for walking it to the bins, are people going to want to do that? And that goes with students too. Are they going to want to do it? Or because custodial staff are not coming into their rooms to change it. So it's up to them. They have to take ownership and responsibility, and they really have to want to do it.
And that's the key, right? Wanting to do it. Now, there are a number of different ways that the messaging can get out there, or maybe the information can be delivered. I would think by the time you're in post-secondary, technology comes into play a lot, whether it's online, whether it's a program that they're accessing, or maybe it's something that's on an app. Are you finding that a lot of post-secondary are using technology to really almost make it fun, or make like the information a little more accessible than it was previously?
Yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, technology is playing a huge role in where we're headed to with waste and recycling. Schools need to know their diversion rates. They want to weigh in on their trash and recycling. What amount is generated on a daily basis, and what's the weight of it? And so that's something that we're seeing nowadays. Or apps that are out there in terms of telling us when our bins are full, so that you can save on labor costs to service the bins. That's something. Or just having the technology to tell your smart bins what goes in what bin. Because you only have seconds when you reach a station. And for, fear of making the mistake, and some people just don't know. And that's okay, but you hope that your signage is effective enough that they'll already be able to make that educated move on which stream it goes where, So I think with technology and the smart bins, we're saving a lot on costs. We're getting to see and collecting the data. And collecting the data was the missing point, because once you have the information, you also need to know, how do we use it to make it a more successful program?
And let that be a challenge for any, students stepping into college or universities right now who are interested in sustainability and recycling and any environmental issues. Maybe there's an app, or maybe there's a feature that hasn't been developed yet, and that's what you could be doing tomorrow.
That's right. Certainly not my expertise, but
not mine either.
I will leave it up to the students.
But we will inspire you to do so. This has been such a fantastic conversation with so many great tips and so much insight into what happens within post-secondary. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Will.
It has been Talking Trash with Will Nash, and I have to say, it has been so much fun with Michelle Dunn, our specialist in green initiatives within the education system.